We're now live on YouTube, and I'll start broadcasting after 3. So 3, 2, 1, go.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Finance, Assets and Performance Scrutiny Committee. Tonight's scrutiny is the budget. Item number 1 on the agenda is apologies for absence. Are there any apologies?
Chair, Councillor Fear was here, but he seems to have disappeared. So maybe he's having technical difficulties.
I did see Councillor Fear appear and disappear. I'm sure our officers will keep an eye on it. He may reappear. There were a couple of other members who we were expecting might be having difficulties joining. We'll continue with the meeting and hopefully they will be able to join us in due course. Item number 2 is declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest to make on item?
No.
Take that as a no. Minutes of the previous meeting are item number 3. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes of the previous meeting?
I move that we accept them.
Moved by Councillor Hutton. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Waring. Are we all happy for the minutes to be approved? And again, I will take that as yes. Item number 4 then is Revenue and Capital Budgets and Strategies 2021-22. With us tonight, we have Councillor Stephen Sweeney, the Deputy Leader, who is representing the Cabinet. Councillor Sweeney, would you like to introduce the item?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. We also have Mrs. Wilts, our 151 officer, who's in the background as well. Yeah, if I could start off with the, I just got an email from Dr. Fear. I will be there in a sec. The link has made my machine go a bit strange, so he'll be back in. If I just start off, the COVID-19 pandemic continues to present significant challenges to the Council's financial position through a mixture of lost income and additional costs. However, it's forecast that the Council will achieve a balanced outturn for 2021, so this year basically. I think it's a fair achievement for this Council at the moment for what we have to go through. Support from central government of £4.5 million to compensate the Council in relation to coronavirus has been unprecedented and has massively assisted in meeting current and future pressures. Further support has been promised for the first quarter of 21-22. This was the bonus money that we weren't really expecting this. So the money that we lose on the first quarter of next year, we'll get 75% of it back. Talking about 21-22, which is what this budget's talking about. You have heard me talk about this 1.275 million budget gap. You'd have heard that at previous cabinet meetings. You'd have heard it at this scrutiny committee. That budget gap has now been filled via an efficiency board, where we had all the managers in front of us and discussed various ways around it, and they came up with a programme of moves which was both feasible and sustainable. So it wasn't some fantasy world sort of account, it was all stuff they were prepared to sign up to. We also have a One Council programme undertaken over 21-23. It's a redesign of our organisational structure, processes and technology underpinned by changes in culture, leadership and governance. This is expected to save £195,000 next year and £922,000 a year afterwards when it is completed. That's £922,000 a year every year. Staff-related efficiencies saving £599,000 with no redundancies at all. A council tax increase we're putting through at £5, which works out at 10 pence or less for 81% of our households. We also got a £250,000 contribution to the Borough Growth Fund to enable continued investment in sustainable environment projects during the period of the medium-term financial strategy. Increased level of reserves from 1.548 million to 3.1 million. This will help to safeguard the long-term financial resilience and reflects the additional risks that the Council may become exposed to. The capital programme for 21-22 It's got 4,600,000 for refurbishing and reopening of Kids Grove Pool, on top of the £1 million that's gone in this year. I'd like to thank the MPs for their support, the government for listening, the LJ for putting our case forward, and our finance team who have achieved an unqualified audit report and all these other things through very, very trying times, working from home, children hanging around with their feet, all this sort of stuff, and yet they've managed to do this. I think that's a tremendous achievement. I think this is a robust and realistic budget, and I'm very happy to tell you about it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sweeney. Do either of our officers who are present and listening in have anything to add at this stage before I open it up to questions from the floor? Don't feel you need to unmute
Nothing
yourself.
from myself, Chair.
Excellent. Nothing from our officers then. There are still a couple of members missing. I trust that they're making efforts to join us. For those members who are present, do you have any questions for Councillor Sweeney?
Chair, if I may, could Councillor Sweeney pass on our thanks to the finance team and the Chief Executive for all their hard work? As he says, getting a balanced budget during this current crisis is quite an amazing thing. So well done to the finance team. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah,
Thank you, Councillor Hutton.
Thank you, Councillor Hutton. I might point out, of course, that the Chief Executive is listening into this meeting, as is the Head of Finance, so I'm sure they've taken those two things. But I will ask them to pass them on to the staff as well, please, Councillor Hutton, because I think they've done an excellent job, to be honest with you. Thank you.
Indeed.
Councillor Mike Stubbs.
Firstly, apologies, Chair, for not getting here on time. My link wouldn't work out to get another member to send me a new link, so apologies for that. Yes, Sarah, I mean, at the start of the report tonight, there's obviously a preamble about the provisional outturn forecast. Now, I consider myself quite learned when it comes to finance, but can you point out to me the total that we are forecasting that we will be overspent in this financial year?
Yeah, we're actually looking at period 9. We are sort of just under around about £400,000 forecast overspend for the year, which we have had that sort of £408,000 tranche of money to do with COVID. Most of the expenditure areas are near the income loss, where we do get 75% of those income losses through from government. That doesn't cover all of it, and a big chunk of that overspend does relate to that aspect, which we can offset against this additional COVID funding. So
that is that the forecast, or is that to date?
That's the forecast for the end of the year, but as we've just completed the period 9 budget monitoring, and that's what we're forecasting for the end of the year at this present time. So.
Okay, thank you. I'll let somebody else go as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stubbs. If anyone has any more questions for Councillor Sweeney or for our officers, they can ask them, or I'm open to general comments and statements on the paper in front of us.
Mark?
Councillor Pickup.
Whether I need to raise my hand or not, so I'll do it this way. Just a very general one, rather than looking at it in a lot of detail. Have there been any changes since the last report that was brought to us?
Councillor Sweeney, would you like to have a go at answering that one, or would you like to pass on to...
I'll have a go. What does she mean, sir? Can you give some more...
It's been in front of this committee already, hasn't it? We've already scrutinised it or approved it, if whatever you want to say. I'm just wondering if there's been anything, has anything changed since it was last brought to us? Anything in terms of government funding or any other priorities that you've had to make within the budget? Has anything happened, for example, with the recycling? I know you've had major problems with that, with the bad weather. Has anything like that impacted into it, or is that still going to be in the forecast that you've got for the current year?
I think it's impacted it, but the £408,000 extra that we've had off the government a few months ago now, I think it's reckoned that will clear all our deficit for the year, and at the end of the year we'll have a balanced set of accounts for this year. So I mean, I don't think there's anything bad happened also. I'm quite I don't want an open and transparent sort of person, but I've got nothing to hide. Have you got anything, Sarah, that you can think that Sarah would be interested in? So 2 Sarahs here, of course, isn't there?
No, just in agreement with you, with yourself, Councillor Sweeney. When we last took this report to FAPS and to Cabinet, we were sort of forecasting an overspend at the end of the year around about £365,000. That has increased to around about £400,000 now, because we've had some additional expenditure around about waste because of the bad weather we've had over winter. Which we factored, that into now. We've had to get some additional agency staff, and then over time, as you're aware, the waste operatives were sort of working on New Year's Day trying to collect the waste in and things. So that has impacted on our outturn for the end of the year. But other than that, and the income shortfalls, there's been no other changes to the figures at present. Okay.
Okay, thank you. For clarity, if members want to participate, you can raise your hand. I can see that, or you can use the raise hand tool in the software. I can see that also. And for the benefit of anyone who's watching on YouTube, and there are currently 3 of you, if you would like to participate, there is a chat function on YouTube, and there is a space for public questions at the end of tonight's meeting. Should anyone who is a member of the public want to ask a question, I am looking at that screen now. Are there any other questions from councillors on this? Councillor Stubbs.
Thank you, Chair. Looking through the budget, Stephen, we've got an increase in the council tax for 2.49% or 2.5%, whatever you want to round it round to. Given the fact that staffs are going to put theirs up by 5%, and the Police and Crime Commissioner by even more than that, because they need to match the totals that the Home Office are demanding, are we comfortable that we are increasing council tax across Newcastle by anything up to 10%? Is that feasible? Do we think this is the time that we should be raising council tax?
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Stubbs. Of course, we're not putting up by 10%, are we?
The people in Newcastle are going to have that, Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, they are. It's that what we're putting up by is under 10% for 81% of people in the properties in the borough. So that's 10 pence a week, less than 10 pence a week we're putting up by. So I can justify that. No tax increase is welcome. Mike, you know that as well as I do. But I think 10% or less for 81% of our people is a pretty good outcome, really. I'm sure there's plenty of other councils like to be in our position. Can I just reiterate one other thing, is that this outturn this year, we are expecting the outturn to be balanced for this financial year. I don't want everybody thinking we're going to be tens of thousands of pounds. We're expecting us to balance this year. But that's all I've got to say on that one, Mike. Thank you.
Chair, through yourself, I fully accept that, Stephen, and I know that the money has to come from somewhere. But for example, local town councils are freezing their precepts to try and balance the impact on the local community. And it seems very strange to me that us as a local authority, and you are right, we can't control what the Police and Crime Commissioner are doing, and we can't control what the county do, but we can control what's happening in Newcastle. And we are choosing, and when I say you as an administration are choosing, to increase council tax by 2.49%. Whether we like it or not, whether it's round or not, that's what we're doing. And basically, are you saying you are comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable that for the services that we provide, a council tax increase of less than 10 pence a week, I'm comfortable with that. Yes, I am. I might also point out, I think Kisgrove Town Council, which is presumably what you're alluding to, has got £250,000 in the bank. Perhaps might be an idea to spend some of it. I don't know. Is that a bit controversial?
Yeah, it is controversial because you're actually breaking the law by trying to spend some of that money, because it's there for a reason. It's ring fenced. So again, this wasn't meant to be political. I said some. I wasn't talking about Kisgrove. I know of at least 3 parishes within Newcastle Borough that are aiming to freeze their precepts. So this isn't just about Kisgrove. This is about local communities local councils, parish councils trying to limit the impact on local communities. Nobody's trying to politicize this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stubbs. There are some other members who would like to come in. I can see Councillor Fear and Councillor Hutton. I'd like to go for Councillor Fear first, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and apologies for my slightly late arrival. I'm afraid the link I was given did something ghastly to my computer, so I had to reboot the entire system. I'd just like to re-echo what Councillor Sweeney has said. I mean, no increase is welcome. We all know that. I mean, in an ideal world, none of us would pay any taxes, and indeed we should aim to make sure people pay as little as they can. However, and I think, you know, there is a rather large difference between a town council and a borough council in terms of the services they provide. I'm just wondering, if we didn't do this, if I ask Councillor Sweeney, I'm assuming there would be a shortfall, and therefore I'm assuming that we would have to have fewer services. And it would be very interesting to know from those who would like to see such freezes what sort of services they'd like to cut.
Thank you, Councillor Fear. Councillor Hutton, would you like to come in before we go back to...
Thank you, Chair. Chair, mention was made of parish councils. I'm linked to 3 parish councils, and I can tell you that one of those parish councils will be putting its precept up, but there's vast differences between parish councils. For example, Whitmore, the precept is almost £50, whereas the Chapel and Hill Chorlton, it's just over £20. So it's very difficult to compare a parish or a town council, even with other similar institutions. And as it says in the report, it'll be about 10p a week for most Band D properties. That's an incredibly small amount to have a balanced budget. So, and I think that we should be setting a balanced budget. That's what the government wants us to do, and that's what we should be doing. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks to Councillor Stubbs and to Councillor Hutton for their contributions relating to parishes within the borough. I'd be very grateful if we could talk about the paper that's in front of us, which is about this council's budget. Councillor Sweeney, do you have any response to make to what you've heard?
I'd have to look through the papers to the exact figure, but I'd rather think that the council tax is going to raise an additional £187,000. If we have less, we'll have less money. We'll have less to provide services for our residents. That's, you know, the money's got to come from somewhere, and it's £187,000, £5 a year gives us. And if we don't have that, we get it from somewhere else. That's all. Thank you.
Councillor Sweeney, I can see Councillor Waring and Councillor Stubbs would like to speak. We'll go for Councillor Waring first.
Thanks, Chair. The other thing to bear in mind, of course, is that if we don't actually put an increase through in the current year, what's going to happen is that we just store up even bigger problems for the future, which is what's happened in many councils in the past. So what happens is that you end up with a precept that is insufficient for the council's needs, and that then compounds year on year on year until eventually they have to put in a huge increase to actually balance the books. So it's actually the responsible thing to do, although regrettable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waring. Councillor Stubbs.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, I was challenged. I take your point about parishes, and I'll happily move on. I was challenged, though, for example, where else I would make a saving and cut to services. You don't need to cut services. There's one line in the budget for £250,000 for the Borough Growth Fund. For £250,000, that would wipe out. If you didn't do that, that would wipe out in one go, plus with a surplus of money that you would not need to put the council tax up. No effect on services whatsoever.
To be clear, Councillor Stubbs, you're suggesting then that the Borough Council's Borough Growth Fund should be slashed to nothing?
I'm saying for 1 year, there is that it is a priority that we don't pass on expenses to the local community. And I'm very happy to stand by that, Chair. Extremely happy.
No, it's a valid point of view. It's not one with which I agree, and I would anticipate it's not one with which the Cabinet or the Council will agree either, having implemented the Borough Growth Fund for very good reasons. Councillor Waring, your hand is raised. Do you wish to contribute again at this point?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Chair, the very last thing I would be getting rid of would be the Borough Growth Fund, because that's the future of the council, and it will give the council the ability to minimise the charges to all of the residents in the future. So that is the very last thing that we should be getting rid of, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waring. I can see some nodding from other members. Councillor Sweeney, would you like to respond on behalf of the Cabinet to that a formal proposal there, but it is suggested?
I think Councillor Waring has said it for me, to be honest with you, Councillor Holland. I think it's the last thing I'd be cutting, and it's a savings to the future that this money is being invested in. So I concur entirely with what Councillor Waring says. Thank you.
Thank you then for that. Are there any other contributions on this item? Any members who've not spoken like to? I can hear your rustling, Councillor Proctor. Are you wishing to speak?
I was, Chair, because I've now lost a video link with you. I'm trying to get back. It was purely to say that I think that at this moment in time, this level of increase is appropriate. Unfortunate, it would be great if we didn't have to, but I think that we would be somewhat irresponsible, in my view, to have no increase whatsoever. And I think that this minimal increase is the right thing to do to protect us for the future.
Thank you, Councillor Proctor. If nobody else has any contributions to make, Councillor Stubbs, your hand is raised.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, I take the point about investment, and I think we should speculate to accumulate. But again, just looking at the two figures, you'd still have a surplus of 63,000 that you could still invest in the Borough Growth Fund. What I'm suggesting is, for 1 year, to take the 187,000 out of that, you can still. I'd be intrigued to know how much is actually still in the growth fund from last year, and are we expecting to spend not only what's currently in that budget, but also the extra 250,000 that we plan to put in this year? If it's 250 from last year and 250 from this year, are we going to spend $500,000 on growth items? If that is the case, fantastic. But can somebody please give me a list of that broken down by budget lines so I can see where we're going to spend that, please?
Thank you, Councillor Stubbs. I'm not sure if it's possible to provide a list, but I'm certain that Councillor Sweeney or one of our officers will be able to give some indication in response to that question.
Thank you, Chair. Have you got an answer for that, Sarah, at all?
Yeah, I'll pull together a summary of the Borough Growth Fund for you, Councillor Stubbs, and I'll circulate it through to the scrutiny members to review. We have the actual Borough Growth Fund for 2021. We have sort of earmarked £100,000 of that for the environmental sustainable strategy, and £100,000 of that is going to go towards the one council. So at the moment there is £50,000 in the Borough Growth Fund that we haven't sort of earmarked for anything in 21-22. So that those funds are sort of already allocated to projects and schemes for 21-22 within this particular budget. So that £187,000 that you were referring to wouldn't actually be there. But certainly I can send a summary through of what the Borough Growth Fund's been spent on during this year, just for clarity for you.
Through you, Chair, if you don't mind. Sorry, Sarah. So the 200,000 projects that you mentioned, are they part of the 2021-22 budget?
Yes, they are. Yeah, the document.
Okay, that's fine. So there's unring fence 50,000. That's fine. Could you also please supply what was spent from the total budget in this calendar year,
Yeah.
and what will be rolled forward. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stubbs. I assume that information will be instrumental in the creation of the opposition's alternative budget, which I look forward to reading in due course. If there are no other comments on that item, we can move on to the next item of tonight's business, which, if I can get the right screen up, I think is the scale of fees and charges. There is a confidential appendix associated with this item, so if we can manage to discuss it without referring to the confidential appendix, we'll make it to the end of the meeting without having to move the exclusion resolution. But to introduce the item, Councillor Sweeney, do you have any remarks?
Fees and charges is something that comes every year. There's either sort of frozen or it's a 3% maximum increase. What we have done is we've frozen all our parking charges, because obviously we want to encourage people to come to the town centre. So we've frozen our parking charges. The rest of the thing is really as normal, but I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Sweeney. Do our officers have anything to add?
Chair, if I can just also point out, you'll see in the report that the fees and charges for Jubilee 2 aren't set, but they're actually delegated for later to follow on for some review work that we're doing in order to look at how we relaunch Jubilee 2 on the back of COVID. There's a lot to do to bring that service back up.
Thank you very much, Martin. I can see two councillors have their hands raised. Councillor Rout and Councillor Stubbs. Councillor Rout, would you like to speak?
I'll defer to Councillor Stubbs if that's okay.
Very well. Councillor Stubbs, would you like to speak?
Just a quick one to start, Chair. The new charge of the £5,000 for elections, is that a full charge or is that a deposit?
I think I know the answer to this one, but would our officer like to respond? If our officers would not like to respond, I have a feeling it's a deposit.
It'll be the deposit, yeah.
County-wide, yeah.
Can I ask then, Chair, that it's sort of clarified really, because a deposit is completely different than a charge. A charge could be seen as quite anti-democratic and sort of costing people out of it, whereas a deposit's much more reasonable. It seems a large amount as it is, but can Martin also confirm that that's been set nationally?
I think he probably can.
Yeah, unless Sarah has any other information on that, then that would be the case.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, I believe that's accurate. That £5,000 is a deposit associated with police and crime commissioner elections only. It's not a charge, and it's not a deposit that's applicable to other elections locally. Councillor Rout, you did wish to speak before. Do you want to participate now?
Yes, please. That would be great. I wanted to say it would be really interesting. I don't know if the fees and charges to Jubilee are going to be discussed outside this meeting. If we could have a look at them at some point, if we're able to, that would be great. And I'm excited to hear that there's work going on to make sure that people are able to access that amenity as soon as it's safe to do so. And just on the car parking charges on a regular basis out within the rules, and not at the moment, obviously, it's very enjoyable to go to the various town centres, including Newcastle. So I'm very glad to hear that we won't be increasing those parking charges.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rout. Are there any other councillors wishing to speak? If there are no other contributions, Councillor Sweeney, do you have any further remarks before we wrap up on that item?
No, I don't think I have. I mean, it's all the discounts things we're doing for the parking are still going ahead as usual. You know, the £1 after 1 o'clock. That's still, it hasn't changed at all really. So we're doing our best to encourage people to come to our town centre. And once the town centre reopens, I'd encourage anybody to come and have a look around, and don't just look down the high street. Have a look down the side streets and see what little gems there are that you'll find if you spend the time to walk around the town centre. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Scrutiny, and thank you for bringing the report. We have made it to the end. We've not referred to the confidential item, which, as I say, is a one-pager on trade waste, whose fees and charges are confidential in commercial terms. I'm assuming nobody actually wants to talk about that, in which case we will move on. The next item is the work programme. We did have some discussion of the work programme at our last meeting. Are there any changes that councillors would like to see or any new issues to raise? No, excellent. We move swiftly onwards then. Item number 7 is public question time. I am looking at the chat on YouTube and I'm afraid there are no public questions. I've had no notice of any questions having been submitted either in accordance with the Constitution, unless our officers would like to correct me. Again.
Oh, you're quite correct. You're quite correct.
Well, hopefully we will get public questions next time. I would be delighted to give the public an opportunity to ask questions. So public questions perhaps next time. Item number 8 is urgent business. I'm not aware of any urgent business to come in front of us today. Do our officers know any different? No, don't believe so. Excellent. Item number 9 is disclosure of exempt information. I won't be moving that because we're not discussing the confidential scale of fees and charges appendix at item 10, and therefore the meeting is over. End of meeting. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks,
Good
Chair.
Right, all.
Good night.
Right.